This episode is brought to you by the Weather Channel app. Did you know the app can help you forecast more than just the weather? With allergy tracking and flu risk mapping. So you know when to stay inside and load up on podcast. As well as air quality and UV indexing. So you know when to get outside, load up on sunscreen and podcast. Forecast more of what you love with the Weather Channel app.
Wells Fargo presents one of the surest ways to grow your money. A Wells Fargo CD account, where you can earn a 5.00% annual percentage yield on an 11-month term with a minimum opening deposit of $5,000. Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/CD rates to open a CD account and start growing your savings with us.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
Hello, and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Siobhan McCarthy. Siobhan brings up such relevant and interesting topics as the resistance to accept that we may be in menopause because of the way it has been viewed in society, and the fact that this is simply not how we see ourselves. She is deeply relatable. And we have a bit of a giggle about the whack-a-mole game of symptoms as one gets under control, another one pops up elsewhere. When it comes to surprising skin changes, I have to say that Living M skincare is genuinely the most luxurious thing to happen to my skin since perimenopause started. I order it on repeat, and I'm not paid to say that. I just want to share it with everyone because it is fabulous. Talking to Siobhan makes me smile, and I can't wait for you to hear what she has to say, so here she is. Siobhan, lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning. Would you like to start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Hassie. Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute honour to be speaking with you. Your podcast is one of my favourites from my daily walks. I think I said to you when we were chatting before that, you know, a daily walk and a podcast is one of my favourite things to do. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, such a pleasure.
So my name is Siobhan McCarthy. I was born Siobhan O'Sullivan in London to Irish parents. So hence my very Irish name and distinct lack of accent. So I've never actually lived in Ireland, but I've lived in London and Manhattan. I really love big cities, but until quite recently when I moved to Surrey with my husband and daughter. So it's been quite a change from those two places, but it's been a good one for our family. In terms of my work, I've worked in the beauty industry pretty much since I left uni, so in brand and in product development. But I think I get my love of product and people pretty much from my mum. So she was an Avon lady.
Wow.
And amongst many other jobs. And I can remember being very little and sitting with her and packing up orders. And they had a small children's range called Little Blossom. It was like nail tints and cheek tints, and that was my reward for being helpful. So that's a really early but a really nice memory that I've got. But I've definitely been beauty obsessed forever, and I think what I love is the way that products can make you feel as well as the way that they can, you know, they make you look. And I think that's been a huge part of my career in what I've done so far and what I'm doing now. I
love the way that your products make me feel, certainly. And it's not just part of the functional routine in the morning, that the whole packaging and the texture of them and the results that I have found, but we will get onto that in a little bit. Yeah. So first of all, where are you in terms of perimenopause?
I am perimenopausal. I'm 43, and I think my symptoms started when I was around 38. Which is probably why it has taken me so long to piece it all together. Because I absolutely was not thinking about menopause.
Well, no, most people aren't.
No, and I hadn't even heard of perimenopause. So any changes that I'd noticed, I'd simply put down to life. We, as a family, we has relocated from London to New York for my job. So career was very busy. I had a young child, and just life. Life is busy. And it's there to get on with. And I think that's when it started. But it's been a number of years now. And I think the road to me accepting that everything I was experiencing was due to perimenopause has been a long one. And I think there's such a strong association with menopause, 50s, hot flushes, missed periods. They weren't my symptoms and I was not expecting it. I'm late 30s. This isn't, why would I know anything about this? It wasn't on my radar. And I think my being slow to accept perimenopause, that isn't uncommon when I speak to other people. And I think, maybe there is someone listening today and they're thinking the same thing. Like they've heard of the symptoms, they've heard the word perimenopause, but thinking, well, I can't be perimenopause or I'm too young. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the thing that was in my head a lot. Maybe I'm just imagining it.
Right.
This is all new. And when I spoke to other people, they would have a similar reaction. Oh, you're too young. And I really started to doubt myself, even though all of the information and facts were laid out before me. And there's nothing more that I love than facts and data. So for me to live in this place of doubt for quite some time, it was a bit unnerving. But I think now that I've reconciled the changes that I've been experiencing and how my life has been changing with all the medical information that I have, then my acceptance has come, but it's been hard. But I think, the lack of acceptance is driven by how we view menopause in society. Things are changing, which is great, but I'm sure there are many women out there now who, like me, have struggled in the past or who are perhaps struggling now.
And I think also that self-doubt, sadly, is part of societal upbringing for many women. You do question yourself, particularly if it's something that might feel a little bit new or out of the ordinary. So I'm sure people can relate to that too. The self-questioning, maybe I'm imagining it. I've heard too many times. So yes. Yeah. But then you discovered that you were?
Yes. And my laundry list of symptoms. I'll start with the first one, which is the one I dislike the most. And it's brain fog. I absolutely despise brain fog. I feel like part of my brain has been stolen. I feel undermined by my own body. And I hate it. I think my ability to be quick, sharp on it, especially with work, I took pride in. And now stumbling around for a word or just stumbling around for a thought or a continuous train of thought, I really, really despise that. So that hasn't been a great one. But, there are lots of others that have been there too. And I think, I've experienced lots of skin changes, feeling low, feeling moody, angry, changes to my period, really low energy. And I think, for the first time ever, I was feeling anxious and starting to doubt myself. And that's really not in my DNA. I'm a confident person, but it felt like I was starting to lose sight of who I was and who I am. And I did actually start to retreat a bit and lose my confidence, which, that's not a good place to be, but I'm getting myself back. I think the challenge being when you recognise one symptom and you start to work on managing it, another pops up. Yeah. So it's just this ongoing conscious effort to be in tune with your body and ensure that you do have a really broad awareness of your symptoms and you don't kind of tell yourself off in your head that, oh no, that can't be it. It's fine. There was one that really took me by surprise. So I've had eczema since I was a baby and it's something that I'm used to managing my whole life, but it started to flare up more often and really painfully on my face, especially around my eyes. So I've been through a whole thing with this: gut health, food elimination, topical steroids, oral steroids, you name it. And, anyone who has struggled with skin, yes, it's on the outside, but it really impacts how you feel on the inside. And that was definitely the case for me, especially when it's on my face, on my eyes. I love eyeliner. I love mascara, and foregoing those, that might seem like a minor thing for some people, but, that's part of who I am. And I like to wear eye makeup, but I just couldn't because I was in so much pain. So a doctor finally diagnosed it after years and years, that as being dry eyes and something called blepharitis, which I now know is a perimenopausal symptom. And it causes swelling, redness and itching of the eyelids. And it's quite common, but it's relatively unknown. And therefore it's often misdiagnosed as hay fever, allergies or eye eczema. but it's caused by a drop in estrogen. So it will cause changes in the eye surface. It will cause dryness and irritation in and around the eyes. Like, who knew?
Well,
Not
this is
me.
it. Yeah. Well, very few other people except for the doctor that diagnosed you, and thank goodness for
and
them.
I must have seen 10 doctors.
Wow.
So, but it was so painful, and the skin around the eyes is so thin. You have to be really careful with steroids, but that would be the only thing that would really get it back to a normal state. But, you know, dry eyes and blepharitis, they're really not up there with missed periods and hot flushes. And I think, like, you make adjustments in your life, but I think maybe that's what we do with our symptoms. We adjust rather than deal with it and think, well, that's just how it is, rather than giving ourselves the knowledge of like how we can treat them and how we can take care of ourselves.
There's a difference between adjusting, accepting, and adjusting. This is a transition and we're just going to sort of make a few tweaks to our lives. We don't want to suffer, but adjusting along the way, as long as it's a positive experience.
Yeah, adjusting can be good. Adjusting can be good and the accepting can be good. But I think when we adjust to something that's impacting the quality of our life and we're accepting that pain, but not doing anything to treat it or care for it, that's when we can get ourselves into a rut.
Exactly. So how are you managing your symptoms currently?
I think for me, education has been key. Knowledge is definitely power. So the more and more I learn, that's fantastic. I think lifestyle changes are really helping, and an attitude of one step at a time rather than a huge leap is a good mindset to have. So this year I've definitely been moving more, and being more active. I have my array of supplements that I know if I stop taking them, like I remember I stopped taking them over Christmas because it was quite full on. I'm like, oh, I'm creaking. My bones are creaking. I'm like, time to get back on the supplements. I've been a vegetarian on and off my kind of teenage adult life, but I just found it wasn't serving me well. So I've actually switched back to eating meat to increase my protein intake. And that's really helped my energy levels. So that's been it's lots of different lifestyle changes that I'm making. But I think all of these things are working for me now, but they'll have to evolve as my symptoms do.
Well, I think that's the best way to do it as well, because they do change and they do evolve. So again, adaptation, but in a positive way.
It's never fixed. It's just fixed for a small time.
I'm desperate to hear about Living M and how it came to be. So how did you meet Caroline, your co-founder?
The very lovely Caroline Breen. So Caroline and I met over 20 years ago at a global beauty company we were both working at. And we were colleagues, we worked in the marketing department, and we worked really well together, but we had a really good laugh, which is the most important thing at work, arguably. And then she left the company a couple of years later, but we stayed in touch. We both lived in North London. So we've had this really long friendship. So I'm so delighted to have her as a co-founder because we have lots of things in common, but we have the love of a really good belly laugh. Like we have a lot of fun together. And I think with a startup, new business, things are tough. You know, things can be tense, tough decisions to take. You know, things might not go to plan or they never go to plan, but you need to have a really good way of supporting each other through. So that's been really good. So it's, you know, it's a friendship, but we've also worked together and we have like a good working style together. So it's pretty dreamy, to be honest. And then layer onto that, both of us are beauty obsessed to the point that before Living M, our go-to birthday present would have been skincare.
Oh,
which
lovely.
we now laugh about because I'm like, not anymore, or else I'd be really cheap if I gave some of our own products.
And where is she in terms of perimenopause?
She's perimenopausal too. She's probably slightly further along, and her symptoms have been a bit different. She is, if you meet Caroline, she's a really calm, relaxed, lovely person. And she started to get really angry. And it really threw her and it really surprised her and it upset her. And she was telling another friend what had been happening. And they said, oh, maybe you're perimenopausal. And she was just kind of, what are you talking about? She'd never heard of it. So the anger was really shocking and surprising for her. She's always suffered from migraines, but they really started to increase as well. So it's been a mixed thing, but yes, she's perimenopausal too.
And do you know what she's...
Two perimenopausal women running a business. It's like, did you remember to do that? No, I didn't.
But at least you understand the situation. I think that's perfect in many ways. Do you know how she's looking after herself?
Yeah, I think so for example, for her migraines, they were getting so bad, it was really impacting the quality of her life. And she was actually taking some really strong medication, but to the point where it was impacting her life 2 weeks out of every month. Oh. And it was like, she can't live like that. So she has started to take HRT. So she's taking the gel, and that's really helping her. So this is the thing, like taking really strong migraine medication when actually she just needed some hormones replaced. It's, and we hear that story often with antidepressants too, like the low mood and feeling sad, and people are prescribed antidepressants. We've heard that so much in our research, and actually that's not always what they need.
Exactly. And there is a place for it, definitely, but
most definitely
not always the solution. So how did Living Emma itself come to be in amongst life and children and moving and relocating and building an entire business and brand?
Oh my goodness. It is a classic lockdown story. To be very cheesy. So we were FaceTiming in lockdown. That Hattie, there may have been some wine involved. And we were having a really long conversation because obviously we haven't seen each other in ages. We would catch up quite regular, but we were talking about everything that was happening, like the world was changing around us, life was changing. And then we started to talk about how we were feeling, which to be quite honest wasn't great. And I think, like, as I said, like it started with like Caroline's sharing, Siobhan, I really shouted at someone. I'm like, what did they do wrong? I didn't really do anything wrong. They were really like, I was just shouting and shouting. And then when she spoke to her friend who said, oh, maybe you're perimenopausal. And she said, I haven't even heard of this. And we started talking about it. And she said that she'd been reading up, but also her skin had been changing quite drastically. And she thought, oh, maybe it's just the stress of lockdown. She has teenagers, homeschooling teenagers. Amazing. Life was stressful. And again, she kind of thought, oh God, my skin's just changed overnight. Maybe it's just the stress of everything. And it was really dull. She could not get her glow back. And we were giggling. She said, Siobhan, I cannot tell you how much money I have spent on new products and nothing is making a change. I'm like, what have you spent? She's like, I can't tell you. And I think at times when we struggle with anything in life, like you can try and throw some money at the problem, but it just didn't shift. And so I started to talk to her about what had been happening with me and how my skin had been changing. So because I suffer with eczema, my skin is always on the dry side. And then I had what I thought was eczema on my eyes. It wasn't. It was dry eyes and blepharitis. And then I started to get really kind of uneven blemishes around my cheeks and jawline, and then some pretty big, I was describing them as boulders around my jawline, like really big spots. And I hadn't really suffered with blemishes and spots in puberty. So why now? I'm 40 years old. I've got dry skin, eczema on my eyes and spots. Like, this is not a good look. Like what is happening? Like everything's kind of going wrong for us, but in this cycle of trying new products, but it wasn't working for us. So for Caroline, she was trying lots of anti-aging, powerful actives, our most potent formula yet. And then for any kind of blemish control, I was in the teenage skincare aisle, women in my 40s walking up and down, but I needed something, but it was all very confused for us, but in very different ways. So we started talking around perimenopause and the fact that it's actually our hormonal changes that will impact on the condition of our skin far more than chronological aging. I think that is medical research that really took me by surprise.
Yeah.
Because the only time we speak about hormones in relation to our skin is during puberty or when we're pregnant. after that, for women, it's this relentless goal to anti-age. But now I know that hormone levels, as they start to fluctuate and decline, collagen levels will start to decrease. So there's so much spoken about collagen. It's that structural protein responsible for skin's elasticity, and 30% will be lost during the first 5 years of menopause. So as we approach menopause, that's a lot. It's a lot. So, and we hear it so often. Some women say, oh my goodness, my skin changed overnight. And it can feel like overnight because it can be good, it can be okay. And then you're like, what has happened? And I think if we are focused on the hormonal skin changes and knowing where we are in perimenopause and menopause, we can focus on that and understand what we need rather than all of these messages around reverse time, regain your youth. Caroline and I started to talk because if we have never made this link before, because anti-aging is so ingrained in us culturally, but the more we read and the more we researched, it all started to make sense that we needed skincare formulated for the skin changes we experienced during menopause. And we thought, well, if we didn't make the link and we're skincare obsessed and we've worked in the beauty industry, how on earth is anyone else making this link? It doesn't exist. So they would continue to try and use anti-aging products being marketed to us because youth is the goal, this society push. And I think, there's the kind of language that is used in relation to anti-aging with fix your sagging skin. It's all very negative. And I think everyone needs some kindness, but especially at this time of life, and understanding that it's your hormones. You don't need to anti-age. And I think there's a brilliant quote from a woman called Ashton Applewhite, and it's, the fear of dying is human, the fear of aging is cultural.
So true.
It's so true. When I first heard that, it really struck a chord with me. This won't be the first or last time you hear me say it. I share that quote really often because I think that's the heart of it. So with Living M, we're just on this mission to normalise any kind of talk of menopause and to normalise understanding hormonal skin changes caused by menopause and positively change this conversation around ageing, whether that be in the beauty industry or just broadly in society, because I don't think we can overcome all of the negative perceptions of menopause without changing the narrative around ageing.
Age is huge as a conversation. And actually, it's one that is very inclusive of men as well. You are definitely, or one is definitely sidelined because you're no longer, again, one, not you, you're gorgeous. One is no longer attractive or certainly doesn't look like somebody in their 20s who is deemed attractive. But I don't want to be in my 20s again.
Agree.
Yeah.
I've done them. I did them and I did them well.
Yes.
I don't need to repeat them. I put a lot of effort into my 20s and my 30s. And, I'm ready to put as much effort into my 40s now.
Exactly, because they're different and they're better. And I'm looking right at 50 in a few months. And I can't wait, actually. I'm hoping that it's a magic door into all sorts of new realms. But the aging is a huge conversation. And going back to skincare, there is one brand that gives you an age at which you should use its cream. And my skin changed what felt like overnight. And then so I thought, right, go back to what I used to use, but I'll try the 75-year-old one and see if that makes a difference. No. And I used half a tub one day almost, and it still didn't make a difference. Then I asked my teenage daughter for some advice, and she said castor oil. I was literally slathering castor oil onto my face. No damage, but then I found you.
And you found us. And I think some of those creams that are marketed to like 60, 70, they tend to be extremely rich, heavily fragranced.
Yes.
In a jar quite often. And they're not giving anyone what they really need. If you want serious skincare, you should have it in an airless pump. So all of your active ingredients are protected. So the integrity of the product is protected for the whole time you're using it. That's really important. But, when we were developing Living M, we had this whole community of women we were speaking to. And this is almost where the gap is, that women felt that skincare was being targeted like 30s and younger, and then 60. So where do I sit? And this is where Living End was born, because you don't need to aggressively anti-age. You don't have to go to the teenage skincare aisle. We understand all these contradictions of perimenopausal skin and your hormonal skin changes. Like we've designed all of the range specifically with your hormones in mind. So it's very, very targeted for women in perimenopause and menopause.
And it is on the more affordable side as well. You don't have to break the bank, which I appreciate enormously. Thank you.
Yes.
And the packaging as well is very slick. It's attractive, appealing. I'm really enjoying it. How did you go about putting together its look?
Even starting with the name and what we were just talking about, like the positive language in the industry, Living M, like at the heart of what we do is like, we wholeheartedly like, life is for living. You don't drop off the face of the earth when you hit perimenopause, menopause, or you're postmenopausal. We have so much more to give. And that's most definitely the DNA and the spirit of me and Caroline. We love living. So I think it was to go against the grain of anything like that. And then in terms of the look, we wanted something clean and really focused on the ingredients, but the rest of our brand to feel really relevant and what women like us want. So our main colours are coral and teal. For us, the coral was really vibrant. It's a happy colour. I think it's pretty ageless. It's just a happy colour. And that's quite different. If you look at a lot of the brands that will target over 40, there's definitely more than a hint of lilac and purples. And it's very kind of staid, old way of speaking to over 40s. And we just wanted to bring something that was really fresh, and just feels more like us.
And it does that beautifully, more than most of us have had enough of the faded, drab, looking rather sad in the corner vibe that many brands offer us once we hit 40.
I know, we're not sad and in the corner, for goodness sake.
Part of managing perimenopausal symptoms for many is stress reduction. But if you've got a young family and you're putting together a new home and you're still running a business, how do you find time to relax?
Oh, that's something I'm not great at, to be honest. I think having your own business, it's, you're never really off. I do enjoy reading. I love listening to podcasts when I'm out walking. I spend some time with my family, which is lovely. This is not relaxing, but it definitely helps me to switch off. I've recently joined CrossFit.
Great.
You read so much about how important strength training is at this time. And it's a revelation. I wouldn't have said that a few months ago, but it really has been. So that helps me switch off, and I really get a kick out of it. So I love that. And then when I go and visit my family in Ireland and see mum and dad, they live just a couple of minutes walk from the beach. So it's this huge sweeping beach, soft sand, and it's most definitely my happy place. So yeah, heading to the beach, whatever the weather. And I find that really calming and kind of totally clears my noisy head.
Where can people find you?
So right now we're sold on our own website. So wearelivingm.com, and all of our products are listed there. And you can also find us on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter with the same handle, We Are Living M. And we also have a private Facebook group, which is called The Living Room. So we invited all of the women who are in our community to develop Living M to join, but it's a good place for a good chat and get some great information and just hang out in the living room.
Finally then, Siobhan, I find that perimenopause is teaching me many lessons. What have you discovered so far?
So I think that's a great question, because there is so much to learn along the way. I think for me, it has been to listen to my body and to trust it. So no one else can do that for me. I think that's my responsibility to take care of myself. And, we can often be at the bottom of the list, but to not push away or push aside what I'm feeling, and this internal dialogue of you're imagining it, push that aside and listen to my body. So rather than, you're just forgetful, you're just tired, you're just stressed. I think it's all these small justs evolve into something bigger. And I think it's important not only for me, but for my family, my husband, my daughter. You know, we talk often about putting on our own oxygen mask before we can be fully present and taking care or being there for others. And I think that's especially true in perimenopause because those hormones are going to get you. But our bodies are incredible. And if we think of everything we can do with our bodies, both good and bad, like the more in tune we are, the less self-critical we are, the better our lives can be. And I think, listening to my bodies, that's the biggest lesson of perimenopause so far. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Hattie.
Well, thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure talking to you. You can find Siobhan and Caroline at wearelivingm.com and on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, all as We Are Living M. And I strongly, strongly recommend everything in their skincare range. Again, not paid to say it, it's just fantastic. I will put all the details in the show notes. Follow us on the podcast app of your choice and please leave a review. I do appreciate those of you who have enormously, as it really does make a difference. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Looking for a new career? Welcome to Do HVAC Training Service Center in North Charleston. Enroll today in our comprehensive HVAC training hands-on field experience-based program, covering troubleshooting, maintenance, installation, and more on various HVAC systems and ductwork. We offer EPA and NATE preparation and testing, along with various certifications. Enjoy payment options. Take advantage of their November specials. Achieve certification in under 5 months. Enroll now for your new journey of skill development and career advancement. Log on to DEWHVACTrainingSC.com to inquire.
Hello, saver. Whether you're saving for that trip to the tropics or saving for an emergency, now is the time to take advantage of Wells Fargo's savings options. Wells Fargo offers savings accounts that can help you save towards your goals. So, what are you saving for? Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/save to open a savings account today.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.